I woke up one night to the sound of my wife laughing in the living room. But it wasn't her laugh that froze my blood. It was a man's voice. Deep, cocky, and laced with arrogance. "Don't worry, babe," he said. "I'll handle him. He won't be a problem after tonight." That was the moment I realized the truth. My wife hadn't just betrayed me. She had invited it into my home. She brought another man, her lover, into the house I paid for, the bed I built for us, and the life I worked to create. Not only that, but she brought him here to humiliate me, to break me, to watch as he put me in my place. She thought I'd beg. She thought I'd fold. She thought I'd surrender. But what she didn't know was that I've bled before. I've fought before. And I wasn't about to be eaten alive in my own home. The air in the living room was thick when I stepped out and saw them. My wife, standing there with her arms crossed, smirking like she was about to watch a show. And beside her, the so-called wolf. Tall, broad, puffing his chest like he owned the place already. He had that swagger in his step, that look in his eye that said he thought I was prey. Before I continue, let me say this. If you love hearing real stories where betrayal meets justice, where the underdog flips the script, you're in the right place. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what happens next, because trust me, this night changed everything. The guy stepped forward, sizing me up. He looked me dead in the eye and smirked. "So you're the husband? Huh. Thought you'd be tougher." His words dripped with contempt. My wife laughed behind him, and that laugh cut me deeper than any insult. She wasn't just cheating. She was enjoying this. She wanted to see me destroyed. But here's the thing about wolves. They're dangerous, sure. But even a wolf knows better than to corner something that can fight back. I didn't say a word. I just stared at him. My silence made him bolder. He stepped closer, poked his finger against my chest, and said, "You don't belong here anymore, man." She told me everything. "You're nothing but a weak, boring loser. Tonight, I'm taking my place." He expected me to crumble. My wife expected me to back down. But instead, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Calm. Not fear. Not anger. Just pure, steady calm. The kind you feel when you know exactly what's coming and exactly how you're going to handle it. See, I wasn't always the quiet guy. I wasn't always the one who avoided fights. I grew up in a place where you either learned to defend yourself or you got chewed up. I had scars to prove it. And while I'd buried that side of me for years, trading it for peace and stability, I hadn't forgotten. My wife had no idea who she was messing with. To her, I was the safe choice. The man who wouldn't cause trouble, who wouldn't raise his voice, who wouldn't fight back. She mistook kindness for weakness. And now she was about to learn the difference. The so-called wolf leaned in, his breath hot on my face, trying to intimidate me. My wife's grin widened, waiting for me to fold. But I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I let him think he was in control. I let her believe her plan was working. And then he made his mistake. He pushed me. Just a shove, a test, a way to show dominance. But that was the line. The second his hand hit my chest, he wasn't the predator anymore. He was prey, and he didn't even know it yet. That's when I decided. Tonight, I wouldn't be her victim. Tonight, I'd remind them both exactly who I was. People always think betrayal happens in an instant. Like one day, everything's fine, and the next day you walk in on your partner cheating. But the truth is, betrayal starts small. It starts as a shadow, a crack, a whisper you can't quite hear, but you feel it all the same. Looking back, the signs were there long before she ever brought that wolf into my home. When my wife and I first met, things were different. She used to tell me she loved how calm I was, how I made her feel safe. She said I was the opposite of every reckless guy she'd dated before, the ones who broke her heart or scared her with their anger. I thought that was a compliment. I thought that's what she wanted. But over time, I started to realize what she really meant. See, in her eyes, calm slowly started turning into boring. Safe turned into weak. She didn't want peace. She wanted chaos. She didn't want stability. She wanted the rush, the drama, the danger. And I wasn't about to provide that for her. I'd built myself into a man who avoided pointless conflict, who worked hard, paid bills, and tried to create a steady life. But to her, That wasn't exciting enough. At first, it was little things. She stayed out later with friends. She started dressing up when she said she was just running errands. Her phone was always glued to her hand, screen flipped down on the table when I walked into the room. And when I asked questions, she had answers ready. Too ready. I wanted to believe her. I really did. Because the alternative meant admitting that the woman I'd trusted with everything was slipping away from me. So I ignored the pit in my stomach. I told myself I was overthinking. I told myself I was just being paranoid. But lies have a smell. You can only ignore it for so long before it stinks up the whole house. The first big crack showed itself one night when she came home late. Way too late. I asked her where she'd been. She didn't even flinch, just said, "Out with the girls." You don't need to worry. But the way she said it? Cold. Detached. Like she wasn't even trying anymore. Then came the phone calls. I'd hear her voice drop to a whisper when she answered, walking into another room. I'd catch her smiling at messages and hiding a screen when I got close. She thought I was blind. She thought I was too nice to notice. And maybe I was, until I overheard her one afternoon. She was on the phone, laughing, and I caught the words that would stick in my head forever. "He's nothing. Don't worry, you'll meet him soon. He won't be a problem." That was the day my stomach dropped. That was the day I knew this wasn't just an affair. This wasn't just her sneaking around. This was something worse. She wasn't just replacing me. She wanted me gone. She wanted her new hero to come in and take my place, and she wanted me humiliated in the process. I wish I could say I exploded right then, that I confronted her, demanded answers, kicked her out. But I didn't. I stayed quiet, because something inside me told me to wait, to listen, to watch. And the more I watched, the clearer it became. She wasn't in love with him. She was addicted to the power, to the idea of watching me fall while she stood there with her wolf, thinking she'd upgraded. What she didn't realize was that every game has an ending. And hers? It was about to come sooner than she thought. So I waited. I kept my head down, kept pretending, kept letting her think she was in control. And the night she finally brought him home, that was the night all the pieces fell into place. The night the wolf stepped into my house was the night I decided this story wasn't going to end the way she wanted. By then, I wasn't just suspicious anymore, I knew. I felt it in my bones. My wife wasn't just pulling away from me. She was already gone. But I needed proof. Not because I doubted myself, but because I knew one day this would all come to a head, and when it did, I wanted her lies to crumble under hard evidence. The first piece of that proof came one Saturday morning. She was in the shower, her phone buzzing on the nightstand. Normally, I'd never touch her phone. But when trust dies, so do the rules. I picked it up, and there it was, a string of messages that made my stomach turn. Him, last night was fire. Can't wait till you're mine for good. Her, soon, babe. He's nothing. You'll get your chance to prove it. I froze. Reading those words wasn't like getting punched. It was worse. At least with a punch, the pain fades. But this? It burned. It stayed. I put the phone down before she came out, my heart hammering in my chest. And that was just the beginning. Over the next few weeks, I collected everything. Screenshots. Receipts. The times she worked late lined up perfectly with his location. Even the way she started dressing, the sudden new lingerie hidden at the bottom of the drawer, it all told the same story. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. And then came the moment that sealed it. One night, she thought I'd gone to bed early. I heard her in the kitchen, voice low, phone pressed to her ear. But the walls in our house aren't thick. I caught every word. He's pathetic. You'll see for yourself. I'll bring you over soon. I want him to know who the real man is. He won't fight back, I promise. He's too soft. That was it. The knife in the back, twisted and turned. It wasn't enough that she betrayed me. She wanted to destroy me. She wanted a front row seat to my humiliation, with her new wolf standing tall beside her. I sat in the dark bedroom, listening, my fists clenched so tight my nails dug into my palms. Every instinct screamed at me to storm into the kitchen, to confront her right there, to end it. But something held me back. A cold, steady voice in my head told me, not yet. Let her dig the hole deeper. Let her think she's winning. And so I played along. I kissed her goodnight when she came back to bed, even though every part of me burned with anger. I let her laugh, let her plan, let her think she was untouchable. Because, while she was writing the script for my downfall, I was already planning the ending of hers. The wolf had no idea what kind of den he was walking into. And my wife? She thought she was the puppeteer pulling the strings. But she didn't realize I'd stopped dancing to her tune the moment I read those messages. The betrayal was no longer a shadow. It was a spotlight. And once the light shines, there's no going back into the dark. That was the night I promised myself. When the wolf finally walked through my door, I wouldn't be the prey. The night it all came crashing down didn't feel like an accident. It felt planned. Or maybe staged is the better word. My wife had been restless all day, pacing around, texting nonstop, smiling at her phone like a teenager. She cooked dinner, but barely touched it. She kept glancing at the clock, and every time I asked what was going on, she brushed me off. By the time the doorbell rang, my gut already knew. This was it. She practically skipped to the door, that smile plastered across her face. When she opened it, I saw him. The wolf. Her so-called savior. He walked in like he owned the place, like he'd been rehearsing this moment in his head, waiting for the big reveal. And the way she looked at him? That was the dagger. Her eyes lit up like she'd just won, like she was finally standing beside the man she thought I could never be. "Sweetheart," she said, her voice dripping with smugness, "this is him." She didn't even call me by my name. She said it like she was introducing some weak character in a story she was narrating. The wolf smirked, gave me one of those up and down stares, and chuckled. "So this is the guy?" he asked. His tone was mocking, amused, like I was some joke he was about to crush. I didn't answer. I just stared back. Silence is a weapon, if you know how to use it. And that night, I sharpened it. He stepped closer, looking around my living room like he was already moving in. "Not much of a fighter, huh?" he said, shaking his head. "She told me you wouldn't put up much of a challenge." Behind him, my wife laughed. That laugh again. Cold, cruel, meant to pierce. I swear it echoed in my skull. He dropped onto my couch like it was his, spreading out, putting his arm along the backrest. "Man, you've had it too easy," he said. "Living in this house, with this woman, acting like you deserve it. But guess what? Things are about to change." He was trying to provoke me, trying to get under my skin. But here's the truth. I wasn't angry. Not in the way they expected. I wasn't trembling, wasn't breaking. I was calm. Almost eerily calm. Because in that moment, I realized something. They thought they were in control. They thought they'd trapped me. But really? They just walked into my arena. My wife moved closer to him, resting her hand on his shoulder like she was presenting her new king. "You see," she said to him, not even looking at me. "He won't fight back. He never does." That's when he stood up, chest puffed out, towering over me. He closed the distance until we were face to face. He smiled, leaned in, and whispered just loud enough for her to hear, "This is my house now." That was his mistake. I didn't flinch. I didn't back up. I locked eyes with him and let the silence hang heavy. He didn't expect that. He thought I'd cower, maybe beg. But I didn't. Instead, I watched a flicker of doubt flash across his face for just a split second. He wasn't used to prey staring back at him. Then, to prove himself, to prove to her, he shoved me. Hard enough to make a sound echo through the room. She gasped, but it wasn't out of concern for me. It was out of excitement. She wanted a show. She wanted her wolf to tear me apart right there in the living room. But what neither of them realized was that the show had already started. And I wasn't the weak husband in her story anymore. I was the twist ending they never saw coming. As he squared up, expecting me to fold, I finally smiled. Just a small, cold smile. Enough for him to notice. Enough to make him hesitate for half a second. And that half second? It was all I needed. The moment his hands shoved into my chest, I knew the game had changed. To him, it was just a push, a way to show dominance, to prove he was the alpha in the room. To her, It was the start of the humiliation she had been waiting for. But to me, it was the line. The one you don't cross unless you're ready for what comes next. He squared his shoulders, expecting me to stumble back, maybe even fall. But I didn't move. Not an inch. His smirk faltered, just slightly, when he realized his little show of strength hadn't done a damn thing. "You see," my wife said behind him, her voice sharp, eager. "He won't fight back. He never." She didn't finish the sentence. Because, in that moment, I did something neither of them expected. I stepped forward, into his space. My eyes locked on his, steady, unshaking. "You sure you're ready for this?" I asked quietly. For a second, I saw it, the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. The wolf wasn't used to being challenged. He was used to prey scattering the second he bared his teeth. But I wasn't moving, and that confused him. He scoffed, trying to shake it off. "Man, don't act tough. She told me all about you. You're soft. You're weak. You." That was when he grabbed for my shirt, yanking at me like he was about to throw me across the room. And that was his second mistake. I didn't think. I didn't hesitate. Instinct took over, the kind I hadn't needed in years, but the kind you never really lose. My hand shot up, breaking his grip, twisting his wrist just enough to make him jerk back in surprise. His eyes widened. He wasn't expecting resistance. My wife gasped, her smile fading for the first time that night. She hadn't planned for this. The wolf snarled, trying to cover his shock with aggression. He swung at me, wild and sloppy, a punch meant to end the fight in one blow. But here's the thing about wild punches. They're easy to see coming. I sidestepped, letting his momentum carry him forward, and with one quick move, I pushed him off balance. He stumbled, crashing against the couch. The room went silent. My wife's mouth fell open. The wolf scrambled to his feet, his face red, his ego bruised worse than his body. "You got lucky," he spat, trying to sound confident. But his voice cracked, and we all heard it. Lucky? No, I wasn't lucky. I was prepared. He was the one who thought intimidation was the same thing as strength. He was the one who thought showing up with muscles and attitude was enough to make me fold. I stepped closer, my voice low and steady. "Walk away. Right now. Before this gets worse." My wife's eyes darted between us, panic finally replacing her smug grin. She wanted a show, but not this one. She wanted me broken, not him. The wolf clenched his fists, torn between pride and survival. I could see it in his eyes, the calculation, the doubt, the realization that he wasn't the predator here. Not tonight. And as he hesitated, frozen between fight and flight, I smiled again. Because for the first time since this nightmare started, the power in the room shifted. I wasn't the weak husband anymore. I wasn't the pushover she thought I was. The wolf had just realized he was the one cornered. He stood in front of me, trying to puff himself up, trying to look dangerous. But his eyes already betrayed him. That cocky fire he walked in with? Gone. Replaced by a flicker of doubt he couldn't hide. His breathing was heavier now, his fists clenched, trembling, not with power, but with fear. "You think you're tough?" he barked, forcing out a laugh that sounded more nervous than confident. "This is just the beginning." And then he charged again. Sloppy, desperate. His swings weren't calculated anymore. They were wild, reckless. Meant more to save face in front of my wife than to actually hit me. I could see his pride bleeding out with every move. And behind him, I caught sight of her face. That smug grin? Gone. Her jaw was tight, her eyes darting, and for the first time, I saw it. Fear. Not for me, for him. I dodged one punch, blocked another. His movements slowed with each attempt, while mine stayed calm, sharp, and deliberate. I didn't rush, didn't yell, didn't lose control. I moved with precision. And the more he swung, the more pathetic he looked. "Enough," I said, my voice steady and low. "This isn't your house, and she isn't your prize." That hit him harder than any shove. His face twisted, and with one last burst of pride, he lunged. But I was ready. I caught his motion, shifted, and shoved him off balance. He stumbled, crashing to his knees. For the first time that night, he wasn't the wolf anymore. He wasn't even a threat. He was just a broken man on the wrong side of a fight he never should have started. You're crazy, he spat, scrambling to his feet. He wanted to sound strong, but his voice cracked, carrying more fear than fury. I stepped forward, slow and controlled, and that was enough. His eyes widened. He glanced at the door. The realization hit him. This wasn't his stage anymore. He wasn't winning. He wasn't staying. Go, I said quietly. Run while you still can. That was it. He didn't argue. He didn't try again. He didn't even look back at her. He bolted. Straight for the door, yanking it open so hard it slammed against the wall before swinging shut behind him. And just like that, the wolf was gone. Silence filled the room. Heavy, suffocating silence. My wife stood frozen, pale, her eyes wide as she stared at the door like she couldn't believe what had just happened. Her hero, her so-called protector, had run out of the house without so much as a glance in her direction. She opened her mouth like she wanted to speak, but nothing came out. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel rage. I felt calm. I looked at her, steady and cold, and said the only words that mattered. He's not coming back. And now you're on your own. Her lips trembled. Her face fell, and the last trace of her arrogance vanished into thin air. The wolf hadn't just run away. He'd taken her illusion of control with him. The door slammed, and for the first time in weeks, the house was quiet. No taunting laughter. No arrogant voice filling my living room. Just silence. My wife stood there, frozen. Her eyes darted between me and the door like she couldn't process what had just happened. A few minutes earlier, she was glowing with confidence, certain her plan would leave me broken. Now, she looked small, pale, shaken. She finally snapped out of it. You scared him off, she shouted, her voice cracking. You ruined everything. I almost laughed. Ruined everything? No. I had just saved myself. What she had tried to do, that was the real ruin. But I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I just stared at her, calm, steady. And that silence made her angrier than anything I could have said. You think this makes you some kind of man, she hissed. You embarrass me. You. I cut her off, my tone colder than she'd ever heard from me. No. I showed you the truth. He wasn't a wolf. He wasn't your hero. He was just another coward who ran the second things got real. Her face twisted, tears welling in her eyes. You don't understand, she said, her voice breaking. He was supposed to. What? I interrupted. Beat me? Humiliate me? Replace me? Her silence answered for her. She couldn't even look me in the eye. That was the moment it sank in. This wasn't about love. It was never about love. She wasn't in love with him. She was in love with the power she thought she had over me. She wanted to watch me fall apart so she could feel strong. But instead, she just watched her so-called protector flee like a scared child. And now, without him, she was standing alone in the wreckage of her own plan. She started pacing, her words tumbling out in frantic bursts. You don't get it. He was supposed to take me away from this boring life. He was supposed to give me excitement. He promised. I held up my hand. Calm. Firm. Enough. No more lies. No more games. I've heard enough. Her eyes widened. She wasn't used to this version of me. The one who didn't argue, didn't plead, didn't bend. The one who wasn't afraid to look her straight in the eye and call her bluff. For years, she thought she had me pegged. The quiet husband, the safe option, the man who would always keep the peace. But in that moment, she realized something she never wanted to admit. The man she thought was weak was stronger than she could ever handle. She broke down then, tears streaming, her voice trembling. I didn't mean for it to get this far, she sobbed. I thought. You thought wrong, I said flatly. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things or storm out. I just let the weight of her choices crash down on her. And in that silence, she finally saw the truth. She had destroyed everything, not me. I turned and walked away, leaving her standing in the living room with nothing but her regret. The wolf was gone. Her power was gone. And soon, so was I. The night the wolf ran was the night my marriage officially ended. Not because we signed papers or spoke the words out loud, but because something inside me shifted. I wasn't her husband anymore, not in the way she saw it. And she? She wasn't my partner. She was my enemy. But I didn't scream. I didn't throw her out. I didn't let my rage burn the house down. No, I went cold. And cold is far more dangerous than fire. Over the next few days, she tried to pretend nothing had changed. She cooked, she smiled, she even attempted small talk like the last few weeks hadn't happened. But her eyes told the truth. She was rattled. The wolf wasn't coming back, and she knew it. I let her play house, let her act like things were normal. But in my mind, I was already gone. The first step was evidence. I had already collected screenshots of her messages, but now I dug deeper. Phone records, bank statements, photos. Every lie she had told was another nail in the coffin, and I was hammering them in one by one. The second step was finances. Quietly, I moved money, closed accounts, secured everything that was mine. I wasn't going to let her betrayal bleed me dry. If she thought she could wreck me emotionally and financially, she was wrong. And the third step, the most important one, was patience. I didn't confront her. I didn't give her the satisfaction of a dramatic fight. I let her believe she still had some control, because that made her sloppy. One night, she broke down and tried to spin it all. "It wasn't what you think," she said, tears in her eyes. "He didn't mean anything. I just wanted to feel something." I looked at her, my face blank, my voice steady. "You wanted me destroyed." She flinched, couldn't even deny it. And right there, I knew I had her. The more she tried to backpedal, the calmer I became. I told her what she wanted to hear, nodding, pretending I might forgive, pretending I might move on. And every time she believed me, I tightened the noose. Behind the scenes, I met with a lawyer. I handed over the evidence. Every text, every receipt, every record of her affair. The lawyer didn't even have to say much. He just looked at me and nodded. We both knew how this story was going to end. She had brought a wolf into my home, thinking he would devour me. Instead, she had unleashed something inside me she didn't expect. I wasn't the meek husband anymore. I was the storm she never saw coming. And the best part? She had no idea. She still thought I was there. She still thought she could manipulate me, reel me back in, maybe even make me feel guilty for what she had done. But the papers were being prepared. The trap was already set. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to break her things. I wasn't even going to curse her name. I was going to let her walk into court, full of pride, ready to tear me down one last time. And then I was going to watch her crumble. The day we walked into court, she thought she had already won. You could see it in the way she carried herself, chin high, heels clicking like gunshots, that smug little smirk plastered across her face. She looked like a woman ready to conquer, ready to take everything from the man she believed was too weak to stop her. And me? I walked in calm. No smirk, no show. Just steady, controlled. Because I knew something she didn't. The game was already over. She had her story ready. I'd heard it 100 times in arguments, how I was cold, how I neglected her, how she found comfort in someone else's arms. She wanted the judge to see her as the victim, the poor wife trapped in a loveless marriage, while I was painted as the boring, lifeless husband who drove her into another man's arms. But lies only work when they go unchallenged. And I had come prepared. She took the stand first, her voice cracked in just the right places, her tears falling on cue. She talked about how lonely she felt, how I shut her out, how she needed someone who made her feel alive. She even tried to make it sound like bringing that man into my home was somehow my fault, as if I had pushed her into it. I let her speak. I didn't interrupt. I didn't even flinch. Because I knew her performance was just that, a performance. And like any performance, it falls apart when the truth steps onto the stage. When it was my turn, my lawyer slid a folder across the table. Evidence. Cold, undeniable, devastating. Screenshots of messages where she called me pathetic. Bank records showing money spent on secret getaways. Phone logs. Photos. Every single lie she told was stripped bare under the harsh light of reality. The judge's expression shifted. Her tears suddenly looked less convincing. Her story started to unravel right there in front of everyone. And then came the knockout blow, the recordings. The ones where she bragged about how her new hero would humiliate me. How she promised him I wouldn't fight back. How she wanted me broken. The courtroom went silent. My wife's face turned white. She tried to speak, but nothing came out. All the power, all the arrogance she had clung to for months, it evaporated in seconds. The judge leaned back, eyes narrowing, and finally said the words I had been waiting to hear. The evidence speaks for itself. From that moment, the outcome was sealed. She wasn't just losing the narrative. She was losing everything. The financial settlement tipped in my favor. The assets I had protected were safe. And her attempt to destroy me had backfired so completely that she was the one left standing in ruins. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just sat there calm as ever, watching the woman who once thought she held all the cards realize she was holding nothing at all. She had brought a wolf into my home to tear me down. Instead, she had unleashed the storm that tore her world apart. And as I walked out of that courtroom, free and unbroken, I knew one thing for certain. I had finally won. Walking out of that courtroom felt like stepping into sunlight after years in the dark. I didn't just win a legal battle, I reclaimed myself. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. She had thought she could define me. To her, I was the boring husband, the weak man, the pushover. But in the end, she was the one exposed. She was the one left broken, watching everything she thought she had slipped through her fingers. And me? I walked away with my head high. Not because I wanted revenge in the petty sense, but because I had survived something brutal and come out stronger. I won't lie, there were nights I lay awake wondering how it had all gone so wrong. Wondering how the woman I once loved could look me in the eye and plan my humiliation. But those nights became fewer and fewer as time passed. Slowly, I stopped asking, why did she do this to me, and started asking, what comes next for me? The answer was simple, a new life. I poured myself into things I'd neglected, friends, hobbies, my own health, and peace of mind. I realized I had spent so much energy trying to be the safe choice, the calm one, the provider, that I forgot I deserved joy too. The betrayal hurt, yes, but it also woke me up. And you know what the best part is? I don't hate her anymore. Hate would give her power she doesn't deserve. I don't forgive her either. That's not mine to give. But I've let go. She doesn't get to live in my head rent-free anymore. Because, in the end, she didn't destroy me. She revealed me. She reminded me of the strength I had buried for too long. She thought she brought a wolf into my home to tear me apart. But all she really did was awaken the storm inside me. Now, I live my life on my own terms. No more walking on eggshells. No more pretending. I know who I am. I know what I survived. And I know that when someone underestimates me again, I'll be ready. So that's my story. But let me leave you with a question. Do you think I did the right thing? What would you have done if you were in my shoes? If you enjoyed the story, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next one. Drop a like if you think I handled it the right way, and leave a comment below, because I want to hear what you would have done. Trust me, the next story, you won't want to miss it.